I was always in the top three. I was a straight A student. The way I described the work I do, and it was given to me by, as an anecdote, by one of the F1 drivers. Anil, he said, if you were an F1, you wouldn't be a driver. I said, I know. I said, you would have been an engineer, okay? You would have been like an Adrian Newey. If you think about starting dental school, okay, then think about going to Europe. Okay? Don't do it here. The reason I know that dentistry, suits me so well. It's a bit like when I'm in karate, or when I'm boxing. Dion, my instructor, was saying to me, he asked me to do some shadow boxing, and I just had my eyes shut, and he was just laughing. And when I looked up, he says, "You're in flow state." One of the things that gets misquoted a lot is the survival of the fittest. That's not the truth. The species that survives and thrives is the species that adapts to the change in the environment. And this guy appeared. He said, "What are you going to do when you qualify?" I just looked at him. I said, I'm going to be the dentist of the Sultan of Brunei. And he just looked at me and burst out laughing. Okay? And I just looked at him thinking, this long, tortuous journey, 19 years later, okay, and I've just taken over Michael Wise's practice in Wimpole Street. And there were paper notes that Prof. Wise had left of different patients. Okay? So I looked down at the box, and it was Prince Baba, Sultan of Brunei. Okay? Can you believe that? Wow. That actually happened. That was a true story, 19 years. Okay. But he was there. I get up between 4 and 4:30 every morning, okay? I have a cup of tea with my mum. Okay? My mum passed away 4 years ago. And then I meditate. And then I write a journal, because what it allowed me to do was download any superfluous and rubbish thoughts I had in my head. I don't have to be thinking about where I want to be, because it's subconsciously active all the time. It's clicking. Nice, yeah, I like it.
Okay, I'm glad.
I like the idea of shared office space. It's quite groovy downstairs, isn't it?
You can now that it's past office hours, it's like a party going on. Yeah. So I walked in some dancing and some like,
wow, we've never had this kind of stuff. I was always like on Saturdays, Sundays and stuff. I used to study hard, so we'd just go off to you'd find a room in the hospital, and then you'd always find other medics and dentists there. They'd be studying, and it'd be like the same study club.
All right.
And then there was one guy, Simon, who was 2 years below me at school. And we both ended up in Newcastle. I was at school with his elder brother. But Simon was doing medicine, and he was an oracle. So there'd be like about half a dozen of us always around there. And you'd see the same people. And he'd be there like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. He'd be there till late, okay? But he knew how to relax as well, we'd go clubbing. He said, "Right, guys, it's 10 o'clock. Let's go. It's Friday." Okay? And then we'd go off. Okay? And then he'd be back up again the next day. But he knew everything. He got a first in medicine. Okay?
Oh, wow.
So I'd ask him stuff like, and he'd be so good at explaining things like, what's the difference between petit mal and grand mal? And he'd say, well, petit mal is when you do this. You don't know that you switch off. And so I'd remember stuff like this, and then I think, oh, this is fantastic. He just explained things so well. And then he went to Oxford, did his PhD after medicine, developed some stuff with titanium.
Okay.
And then got into IT. I mean, he was just one of these polymaths. He could apply himself. It's just fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But it just gave me the impression that there were so many talented medics and dentists, and they all are. So, I don't know if you've started recording or not, but I'm quite happy to just carry on talking. But, one of the reasons I'm here, as I've said to you guys before, I'm an intensely private person, but I'll talk about myself or about reflections of my life, which I think will potentially help. So that's the reason I'm here, really, because I can see you guys are doing some good work here. But just going back to the story of Simon and other people that were at medical school with me, we qualified and we were always top of the class at school. I was always in the top three. I was a straight A student, 10 straight A's, 4, 5 straight A's at A-level, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, and then you go to dental school, medical school, and then you realise that you're probably middling, or you fail exams. I mean, I was a very successful student, but I also failed exams, serious ones. So, and I'd be thinking, whoa. And then I realised that it was all right to fail. I never, and I didn't have pushy parents, although both were academics, and I just kind of taught myself. But I've been asked, if I've been influenced or been, if I've had people that have inspired me, and probably no. I've kind of always driven myself. I've always been like that. But when you see and when you talk in instances like this, and you think, actually, yes, he did maybe subconsciously inspire me to think that we're at the same school. We both qualified with straight A's. He was a kid that was just a couple of years below me at school before we went to medical school or dental school. And like many of the kids that were in the top 5 or whatever, they were just brilliant. And what really upsets me about having spent 34 years now in the profession is seeing people that were in my year, guys that were way better than me. I mean, clinically, I was very good, and I got medals and stuff like that. But I mean, I'll tell you a story about that as well. But to see people have been ground down by the profession, when they qualify. So I'm keen to let the audience know that if you've either just qualified or if you're about to qualify, okay, that yes, it is a hard profession. You're going to be very successful. You really will. You've got a fantastic opportunity here, but it's not an easy road. And so, for example, when I went to the Eastman, I got a place at the Eastman. I did very well academically. I was there and everything else. And they took 6 students that year of about 400 that had applied that were all amazing. I mean, it was literally, like the Top Gun of postgraduate education there. And Derek Setchell, he said to me, Anil, you're applying, but I've got a list of at least 10 people that that have applied literally in the last few months. Okay? And these are their CVs. And you could see they were like the best of the best, all that kind of stuff. Okay. And anyway, I got in. That's another story. But I got in, and having left dental school with like medals and gold medals in operative dentistry, I was good technically. When we finished, Derek said, "Well done, Dr. Shrestha. You've got a distinction." Said, "These are your preparations for the teeth that we had to do." Okay. He said, "You've got a distinction for your operative dentistry, but out of your class of 6, you came 4th." And I could tell because he lined them all up on his desk. Okay. And I knew just by looking at them, because I recognized the signature of their work. When you get to that level, okay, that you've actually understood operative dentistry at a high level. And it was something that I found that I was really interested in. Other people maybe in something like, I don't know, orthodontics or endo or something like that. But it's not a bad thing to fail. Okay? And it just prepares you for life. So you've got to develop an attitude of resilience. You've got to remain focused,
I think for some context as well for the audience, and I was and Anil have had some conversations before, and I think the one thing stuck with me so far is a quote you brought up. Would you like to refresh that in our memory of the Darwin quote you mentioned before?
Oh, the Darwin quote, yeah. So one of the things that gets misquoted a lot is that he says it's a survival of the fittest, or that's what people think he says. That's not the truth. What he actually said was the species that survives and thrives is the species that adapts to the change in the environment. And that change in environment starts as early as leaving school and going into dental school, when you learn how to accept failure and resit, etc. Because you're going to do the same thing again when you come into dentistry as a profession. Okay, you're going to find you thought you were the best at school, and then you're struggling as a NHS dentist or something. Okay, you're going to find that things change around you all the time. So people of my generation will say to you, "Oh, dentistry was much harder, and we did so many more crowns, and you don't know anything." Okay? But the environment's changed. The thing is, you're going to be just as good as us. We just don't have the same kind of perspective as you, because the world's changed in the last 34, 35 years. Okay? So don't let people give you the impression that it's impossible, or it's going to be really difficult, or things were better before, or things were harder before, because what I want to see you do is all of you to kind of seize the opportunity, realize that things have changed, and see the opportunities in it, and then grow.
I think one thing that I took quite a lot from having conversations with yourself is the mindset of visualizing where you want to be, and designing your steps to move towards that. And I think that's a topic we'll get into for sure. One thing in the context of what we were talking about with failure, I wanted to ask you is, as someone who has high aspirations, has high ambitions, and I think this is also applicable to the majority of young dentists nowadays, right? And I think it's also why failure hits so hard for a lot of young dentists, because we're already aspirational. How do you handle that failure as someone who has these high ambitions, who might perceive that as kind of a knockdown in their potential?
Develop resilience. First of all, step back, okay? Focus on what you want. I knew from a very early age where I wanted to be. I'm in Wimpole Street now, and I treat the most illustrious patients. Very few of them, 1 or 2 patients a day. You've been to the practice, you've seen it, I remember when I started dental school that I had focus then, because there's a little story where I'd started. It was just literally the week before term started, okay, and outside the canteen at Newcastle Dental School were the 5 boards for each of the years. And my name was there, okay, number 71 out of 70, because I'd been appended on out of the 70 people that started, okay. And I remember looking at it and thinking, next week I'm going to start dentistry. And this guy appeared just next to me, and it was one of my best friends from dental school, became one of my best friends, a Sikh guy called Gully, okay. And anyway, we introduced each other and to each other, and I saw that he was going to be in my group, and he said, "What are you going to do when you qualify?" And I asked him first, and he said he was going to go back to Birmingham and work with his brothers and everything. He said, "What about you?" I just looked at him. I said, "I'm going to be the dentist, the Sultan of Brunei." And he just looked at me and burst out laughing. Okay? And I just looked at him thinking, "You twat." Anyway, he said, "Why do you say that?" He said, "Because my uncle's a physician at the Sultan of Brunei, and he actually said to me, Anil, before you start, okay, just know that there's a job waiting for you after you qualify, okay, and come over and see me." So I thought, okay. And anyway, this long, tortuous journey, 19 years later, okay, and I've just taken over Michael Wise's practice in Wimpole Street, arguably the most famous practice in the whole of the Harley Street area. And the managing director of Shotlander, who I was a consultant for, had come to see me, and the girls had left boxes out in the waiting room. This was the week before we were starting seeing patients, and there were paper notes that Prof. Wise had left, okay, of different patients, okay. And John said, "What's that? We're just going to go into my office where you went." He said, "Oh, what are these?" He said, "Oh, the girls, I've just asked them to sort out the notes." And he said, "Is that who I think it is?" And I didn't know what he was talking about. So I looked down at the box, okay, and it was Prince Sultan of Brunei. Can you believe that? Wow. That actually happened. That was a true story. 19 years. The reason I'm telling you that is because he never turned up. I never saw him as a patient, so I don't mind disclosing that. Okay? But he was there. And I thought, wow. And it all came back to me like that. Now, I was focused from a very early age, and I just consciously knew that I wanted to be working at a very high level, not just in NHS dentistry, etc. And I had that focus and I had that resilience. The resilience meant that things would always go wrong. I'd fail exams, I'd apply for certain things, certain doors would open, certain doors would close all the time. Okay, but I learned to accept it, okay? And that's what I want to get across to the younger generation. That you learn to accept failure, but don't take it to heart. Okay. Find a positive in everything that happens to you. My life's not perfect. It's not been an easy journey, and you may think that I've achieved a lot, and I really don't care, because I'm not here to seek accolade or approval or whatever. Okay, I'm very happy in my own little sphere, just getting on with my life. And if I carry on for the next 10, 15 years that I want to, towards the end of my career, and just do what I'm doing now, and no one bothers me, I'm very happy. I'm appearing here, and I don't know how many people are going to bother watching, but if they do, then just know that I'm here to say that these are the lessons I've learned, and one of them is develop resilience, that persistence. Life is not meant to be easy. Life is up and down, up and down, up and down. It's supposed to be like that. Okay? So that's one of the beauties of it.
So base of that resilience, right? That's of course a continuum throughout your life, right? When you were an undergraduate student having this vision of operating at the highest level, how does one break that? How does one break such a lofty aspiration down into tangible goals? And how did you kind of monitor and map out the way you'd get there?
Great question, because that's the next logical step. Okay, you can have these aspirations, okay, but they just become dreams. Okay, I'm apparently very disciplined and focused. Okay, and that's what people tell me, and I suppose that's true. But quite honestly, I don't care. But the point is that I have those aspirations. I have goals. I do that for everything in my life, not just dentistry. Dentistry is just dentistry. Dentistry is just a part of your life. It's a big part of our lives. But from those goals, I'm going to tell you a little about what I do in the morning, okay, my routines, because that'll help explain. Okay, but from those goals, I focus on it. Okay, I then plan. Okay, I plan what I know, what I don't know, how to broach those gaps or those bridges, and then I schedule. Okay. If you don't schedule it, okay, then, and it's not in your diary, okay, or a timeline of like 3 months, I need to finish this, I need to, like, learning Russian. Okay? I gave myself 18 months to get to B2 or B1, B2. I did it, and it was a bit longer. It doesn't matter whether you hit those goals or not accurately. Okay, it's you're not doing O levels and A levels anymore. Okay, this is all life, and then you execute. Focus, plan, schedule, execute. Have a goal. Be resilient. Know that it's not going to be an easy journey. Focus, plan, schedule, execute, and then the key discipline, the key to all success. For me, is develop self-discipline. Self-discipline, I describe, self-discipline is the ability to get up, do what you need to do, when you need to do it, even when you don't want to do it. Get up, do what you need to do, when you need to do it, even when you don't want to do it. If you can master that, okay, then I'm telling you, you can achieve whatever you want to, because I've managed to do it. And I've studied successful people. And the interesting thing is, I didn't go study them before I was kind of conscious of all of this stuff. I studied them way later, thinking, oh, actually, they have the similar traits, it's, and you pick up a few things. But I've realized that intrinsically, I've always been like that. I mean, I remember when my wife was asking me about this. She said, why do you, how did you learn to study so well? And as you know, she was immense brain. I mean, she graduated as a doctor at 20 from being homeschooled. But she said, what did you do? And let's not talk about that. And I remember my dad used to come into my room from the age of 13 onwards, okay, and say, go to bed now. And it'd be like 1 or 2 o'clock. Okay? This is when I was at school. And I'd always say to him, I'll go when I finish, Dad. Okay? But I'd be up for breakfast. And then I'd be doing things like, I was talking to my brother recently. We were just laughing about the fact that I used to study at breakfast. Okay? So French, I thought, who wants to learn French? It worked. I've had French girlfriends, so it's amazing. Well, cut that out. But you learn skills, and I used to learn 20 new French words a day before my O levels came. For breakfast, that's like 100 words a week. Okay? Because I just thought, okay, I'm going to schedule it. Okay, so I'll be having cornflakes, milk, or whatever. Okay, and Mum would be saying, get off to school now. Okay, oh, I just need to learn this, and but I would do it. Okay? So with those particular traits that I've followed all my life, okay, it's made a difference. So the habits that I have, okay, so I get up between 4 and 4:30 every morning. Okay, 5 o'clock. I'm always meditating. I've had my coffee, okay, and I have a cup of tea with my mum. Okay, my mum passed away 4 years ago, okay, but I always have a private chat with her for 5-10 minutes while I have my tea, okay, and then I meditate, and then I write a journal, okay. So I have an electronic journal. I used to write it on paper ever since I was about 15. Mum bought the first journal for us, and my handwriting was like, anyway, not that I've kept them, okay, but I learned to write a journal because what it allowed me to do was download any superfluous and rubbish thoughts I had in my head. If I was like, if you just don't write things down, if you allow yourself to just constantly think about something, okay, it just goes around and around your head. Yeah. When you learn to meditate, you learn to literally clear your mind. Okay, you switch off. It's like exercising the brain, but it's just completely peaceful. Okay, so after I meditated, I write a journal and I keep it to 1 page. I write it on an electronic journal, so I have an iPad, okay, and I just write sentences. So never more than a page, okay. Now, I learned to do that when I was going through school and university and everything, and you're going through all the stresses of life and your relationships, you fall in love, you fall out of love, all that kind of stuff, okay. Stuff would be in your head all the time when you're trying to finish your finals or exams and things. So I started writing just my thoughts. It meant that I could just offload the thoughts there, okay, and just leave them to one side and park them. Then I could get on with the rest of the day. And then I started to literally refine that to the point now where I just write. I still write every day, but I just write a few thoughts that are in my head, okay, just to clarify my mind, okay. And then I always write a note to myself, okay. So I reflect back as almost if I'm standing behind myself. I know it'll sound a bit spiritual and weird or whatever, okay. And I advise myself, okay? And I think, okay, you know where you want to go, because subliminally I've always still got that focus. I want to still achieve a lot more than what I've got now, because I'm just constantly on a path of improvement and learning and stuff. And so I write a little note to myself at the end of every week. I just review. Okay, I think, okay, at the end of every year, I can review the whole year, just summarize it. Okay, what I've learned, what I haven't learned, etc. Then I go to the gym. Then I come back, have breakfast with my wife, unless I go straight to the practice. And I keep work to 10 o'clock till 5 o'clock, okay? 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock, all I focus on is work, okay? Unless I've got guests like you coming or whatever, you know, and then I'll give myself maybe an hour and that's it. But I get all my work done. I don't make, you know, social calls and things like that. I don't waste my time, basically, okay? 5 o'clock I finish. 5 o'clock till 5:30, till 6:30 at the latest, okay? Then I've just finished all my admin and everything else. I've tidied everything up, okay? And the girls have gone home by that time. And at 6:30, I head back off to the gym, spend about not more than an hour, okay, just stretching or whatever, and then I go home, okay, have dinner, etc. And over the course of the year, that might vary by, I don't know, I might go to the gym at 7:30, as I've been doing recently, because I've got a lot more work to do, and then I'll make sure I'm always home by 8:30 at the very latest. But that's the way that I structure my day. And when I focus and plan and schedule and execute, okay, I put in all of the things that will lead me to the things that I'm trying to improve myself on. Okay.
I think one thing that we reflected on at your practice, for example, and just to give people some context, your practice is very, very intentionally engineered from the moment someone comes in to all the different technology that you have within the practice, your nurses, the protocols that they have. But even now when you're speaking about every single part of your day is very methodical, and even when it comes to mapping out, into the future, everything is very optimized. What I want to go back to is that process initially where you were forming these routines and forming these habits. What was it like in that formational period? Maybe you were, just graduating. Maybe you were still an undergrad as you were developing, because at that time, there's so much more going on, right? You're studying a lot. You've got relationships. You've got a lot of things to worry about, right? Whatever it might be. How did you manage everything in that time?
Very astute, because that's actually when I started to develop those things. Remember, I'm 30 years ahead of you, okay? So at that time, I was at university, okay? And I was training a lot. I was I did a lot of karate even then, and I was training at the for the British Universities team, which then became a bit wider, etc. And I was finding that trying to train at least once or twice a day, every day, and fit in my studies and all the stresses of passing exams and things was a real struggle. Okay? And then I was developing relationships. I mean, when you go to university, you're supposed to have fun. I feel sorry for the people that went through COVID and everything else, because you go to university and you learn how to socialize. You learn if you're going to drink, you learn how to drink. You learn how to meet girls. You fall in love. You kind of you end up playing sports. You end up building relationships with people that become your friends for the rest of your life, and you do, especially in dentistry. Okay, and I was finding that all the things I wanted to do, especially when you're out of the safe haven of being at home and everything's structured for you and your mum's cooking for you and doing your washing and everything else, all of these things, I realized very quickly within my first year, that I needed to structure my life. I've always been very organized and disciplined. It's not something somebody's taught me. It's something that I've refined, okay? And you can as well, especially if you're thinking about developing a career in dentistry or in anything else, okay? I'm studying finance at the moment, for example. Okay, so I have particular goals that I need to achieve, particular exams I need to do, etc. Okay, and so to do that, I just learned to set aside time. I learned not to over egg it. When I went out, I needed to sleep enough. I learned about my body. Okay? That's the other great thing as well. Okay, you need to, if you're going to achieve anything in life, okay, you need to understand that you're in this physical body which is going to carry you through the rest of your life. You need to look after it. Okay? Which, I mean, I go to the gym twice a day because I just like boxing and martial arts and everything, and I'm improving. But I'm not just going there to do cycling for 10 minutes or whatever, or hit the bag or whatever. I have a personal trainer. I have a professional boxing instructor. I was there this morning. Okay, and then when I go to karate in the evenings, okay, I'm aiming for my 4th dan, so I know what I need to do for that level of exam, etc. So I've structured, and I'm not randomly doing things. Okay, I set aside a time for it, and I set aside a goal for it. So I learned that from going through the kind of chaos of becoming an independent person as a student at university. And then just as you qualify, like for many of the audience here, okay, you learn to structure yourself, so you learn how to pay your mortgage, you know, how to buy a car, how to run a business, etc. If you want to learn all of that, then it's like setting out your goals for your CPD. It's a personal development plan. That's literally what it is.
Sure.
It's as simple as that. I mean, the fact is, all I've done is I've just broken it down, okay? But all of you guys, whether you're watching or whether you're not watching, everyone learns how to do that. They just do it in a kind of a less systematic, organized, and reflective way.
And on that, especially as you have a lot of focus, and if you have a goal and you're working towards this long-term vision that you have, naturally you're going to have to sacrifice. And whether it's sacrificing things or whether it's sacrificing time.
I wish. So I remember somebody asking, a close friend of mine, said, "Why'd you get up at 4 o'clock?" I said, "Because there's so much to do. There's so many things I want to do. I literally wish I could have 2-3 lives running parallel at the same time." Because you end up having to sacrifice, you know, you think, so I think I showed you a picture today of the 5 of us, friends of mine, all from the same karate club. We've known each other since we were young teenagers until we'd reached to national level. We'd all achieved sort of a junior level at international level, I suppose it was. And I sacrificed that. If I had a choice and I could just do whatever I wanted now, okay, and at that time, I would have been a professional karate instructor. I would have loved to have just run a karate school and carried on. Okay? Eddie, my friend, is an 8th Dan, okay? And he runs a school that, and he teaches me. And we were contemporaries. We were on the same teams together. You know, we graduated. We basically did our gradings together and everything. But he led a different life. I mean, he became a law enforcement officer in the police, etc. And so I sacrificed that. But what I'm doing now is, I suppose it's not delayed gratification, but it's making up for it now by being able to train when I'm more in control of my life, and I have established myself, I suppose, if that's what you want to call it. But
a question that comes to the back of that then, Anil, is, of course, in what you've done, you continue to grow. And you mentioned before how many people leave university and due to the throes of the profession, they almost restrict themselves, right?
Oh, yeah.
So talk to us a bit more about how you developed afterwards. You know, you mentioned the Eastman. What should young dentists be thinking about to take it to the next level, even when they're a bit more experienced and they shouldn't put their foot off the gas, as it were?
So the whole landscape in dentistry and the career pathway is something that I'm very interested in. I've continued an interest in. I mean, until literally last week, I was actually, until very recently, I was the chair of the advisory board in primary dental care at the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. So technically, I'm a specialist in prosthodontics, but I've always had an interest in primary dental care, developing career pathways in places like in Nepal, the specialist exams in Bahrain, and overseas in the Middle East, and in this country as well. And what I would say is that all of you should commit to excel, commit to really learn as much as you can about your particular subject. I mean, when you qualify, you know, you're literally like young chicks about to flee the nest or whatever, you know, and you're learning to fly, and you'll develop different interests, but develop them quickly. And when you do, if you find something like orthodontics you enjoy, okay, then go and do a diploma course or go and do some courses. Try everything. Find something you like. I mean, I was lucky because I knew from you know, when I was at dental school that, you know, I just liked high precision work, you know, with an aero to high speed handpiece or whatever, you know, and hand instruments, all that kind of stuff. I did all my dad's gold teeth, 7 of them. I prepped his teeth. I cast his teeth. The only thing I wasn't allowed to do by myself was weigh the gold. Okay?
This is back in dental school?
Yeah.
All right.
He still has them.
Oh,
how long is that? That's almost 40 years or so.
That's pretty good work then, yeah. And okay, awesome.
Oh no, it's like classic dentistry then. I mean, it was just amazing, you know. We were lucky in that sense, but you know, you guys are lucky in other senses as well. So, you know, it's not like you've missed out. I mean, no one does that sort of work anymore. So, but commit to excel. Find something you really like. Okay, I did. I wasn't taking exams for the sake of, you know, counting degrees or whatever. And you've seen my wall, okay, and there's at least one thing missing there, okay. And the thing is that I was literally I was finding a career pathway where I could develop those particular skills and have an accreditation for it. I realized then it was for me to prove to myself that I'd actually learned. You know, when you go to somewhere like the Eastman, you get an MSc in conservative dentistry at that time with Derek Setchell. I mean, that's, you know, that was a kingmaker degree. Or I got the MGDS, which was the old gold standard in general practice, and I was one of the very last people to get it. And again, you know, that was like the Freemasons of dentistry. Everyone that got it was literally were the founders of the FGDP. Every single dean up to just before, I think, Abbey Powell, or just after Abbey Powell, every one of them had MGDS. Okay? It was like an undercurrent of acceptance, really. But what it also did, as I realized later on, as dentistry became defensive and you know, things changed, because when I qualified, the fact that the patient sat in the chair was actually implied consent. Okay? You're sitting in the chair, I'm going to take that too. I'm going to try and root fill it. Oh, it didn't work. Broke a file in it, and I just took it out. Okay, is that okay? Yeah, okay. That's what it was. Now, you know, graduates have a different scenario, and so it's important that you do have something like an MSc or a master's, or you go into specialist training, or you get a diploma, or you get a fellowship or something. Okay, just to prove, not to yourself only, okay, but also to other people, your peers, that are one day going to judge you. One day, every single one of you will end up having some kind of adverse communication with the GDC, and the first thing they'll be looking at is your training. Okay? And the time to do it is now. Do it when you're young. Okay? Do it because you have the time, because life becomes more complex. There is never a good time to study. Okay, it's like, you know, you've left university, and then suddenly all those cushions are taken away. Okay, you're suddenly thrown into the world. Okay? So if you have that focus that I always had, okay, I knew that whatever the environment had changed to, which was that suddenly, you know, I was out of university, I'd qualified, I was working, I was paying a mortgage, I was married, all that kind of stuff. Okay? I adapted to it. But there was always a subliminal message there that subconsciously I knew that I wanted to achieve where I am now. Okay, and it's not a terminal point; it's a continuum. Okay, it just improves you. I mean, life's about growing and learning. Okay, and you should be. And dentistry is such a fantastic profession. Honestly, it allows you to do that. It rewards you extremely well. It has a structure. Okay, it has its hurdles. But the worst that's going to happen to any dental graduate, especially the young ones now, is that they're going to end up in a very comfortable upper middle class life. Okay, whatever life throws at them.
It's a good place to be. Okay, Anil, I think one thing we can pivot to now, which is also very relevant and pertinent to your expertise, is patient experience, and also by extension, patient relationship. Right? From what I gather, you're someone who knows your patients very well, and someone, as in accordance with the Darwin quote, who can adapt with the patient in front of you. So talk us through, Anil, a bit about how you built rapport with your patients, not only now at Point, in Whipple Street, but also when you were in your earlier years up north, and the range of experiences you've had, and over that time, how have you adapted your communication and rapport with patients?
Oh, well, where do I start? Yeah, it's about relationships. Everyone knows how to speak to other people, okay? But when you're in the position of a health provider, okay, people still look up to you, even though things aren't as almost in a patriarchal system as they were maybe decades and decades ago. You know, that you have patients who question you and things. Okay? But my particular practice has evolved to a point where, as my wife says, we have relationships with our patients. You know, they call us, they speak to us about personal things, they ask advice, not just in dentistry, etc. And we get invited to the most amazing social events and things. So we develop relationships. And my particular practice is essentially, it's a referral practice. It's essentially close to the public. So we only take referrals from doctors we know, dentists we know, and patients who have already been to see us before, and they've referred patients. Because then, you know, they know what they're getting. So that all our patients are basically high net worth, ultra high net worth, or VVIPs. And I wasn't like that. And able to speak to them when I first qualified. When I first qualified, I was in the Northeast. And I think I told you the story about the dichotomy between seeing two of my patients who both wanted me to gave me the opportunity to go and see their falcons. Okay, the first one when I was up in Yarm in the northeast, there was I was trying to think of his name, Terry. Okay, just come out of prison. And we were just chatting, and by that time I'd already learned how to speak with a Geordie accent, so I was just like them. I'd adapted to the environment, and anyway, so he said, "Oh, come and see my falcon." I said, "You what?" He says, "I'm a falcon," and he took me on in this, what was it, Fort Cortina or something, okay, and into some hilltop or whatever, okay, and he had this falcon. It was a bit like watching that film. I don't know, it'll be you guys would be too young for it, okay, but it's like Kess.
Yes, yeah.
And he just had this falcon, and it was like flying around. I was thinking, that's freezing now, Terry, let's go.
Give me the Cortina.
and then what happened? When was it? Just pre-COVID. I get invited to Dubai, okay, and by one of the Emirati princes, and basically we end up in this desert, okay. He says, "Come and see this falcon." Okay, I said, "How much is that?" Something like that. Oh, I just spent £50,000 or whatever it was, okay. And he had these guys in these jeeps, and one of them was holding this remote control, another one was holding a screen, okay. Basically, there was this 8-foot plane, okay, with a piece of meat on the back flying off, okay, and the prince just got the falcon to go up, and you could see on this screen this piece of meat hanging off the back of this plane, this remote control plane, swooping onto it, okay. And I thought, wow, that's not like how Terry did it. But you see, I kind of adapted from that end of social environment to this. And remember, I'm from Nepal. I came from a developing nation. I mean, I think you know my background. I came from a very privileged part of Nepal to start. And then when I came here at the age of 5, I was suddenly in semi-detached suburbia in the 1970s. Oh my God! I mean, I spent my school days sort of playing kiss chase with the skinheads and things, But I learned how to speak like a Cockney when I was down in London, and I learned how to speak like a Geordie when I was up there. So I kind of adapted to the same sort of thing as I came up to Harley Street, and it was really my wife who is a very cultured, very refined Russian lady. She's a dentist as well, and she introduced me to high society. And she was part of, let's not talk too much about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we have shared interests in art, music, culture, wines. She's a champagne connoisseur, things like this. Okay, so you kind of meet people in that same environment. Okay? I was just asked yesterday, invited yesterday by one of the lady patients that came to see us, said, "You must come to dinner at Annabelle's." Okay. I mean, I've been several times, obviously, but it's nice to have that kind of social interaction with your patients, and we curate the practice to reflect us and the patients. So you've been there. You come into the waiting room. As soon as you walk in, it feels like you're walking into somebody's private apartment. It doesn't feel like a dental practice. And then you go to the waiting room. You think, oh, I mean, you've seen it. It's got my wife's artwork and my some of our art collection and things there, and it's got books and everything else. Okay? And patients like that sort of thing, and they're the ones that appreciate it. They know Renee Lalique's work. They pick up books on Mikimoto pearls and things, okay? And they say, oh, and you can have conversations like that. So I've adapted to it because this is where I ultimately knew in the week before I started dental school that I was going to end up in. Okay, it may not be in Brunei, okay, but it's in the equivalent here. And whether it was in Brunei, whether it was in Beverly Hills, whether it was in Manhattan, or whether it's in Harley Street, okay, I was going to end up there anyway, okay, because I had that focus. So you know that life's not going to be exactly the way you want it, but you just do a little bit every day, even subconsciously, okay, and then you will get to fulfill your potential.
I think one thing there was really that immersion within the culture, and that bringing yourself within that kind of circle almost of society, and being able to have a conversation with someone in a realm that they feel comfortable in, and kind of becoming integrated within that. As you were moving into that kind of that realm of relationships and where you are now, the type of clientele that you are serving now, what were some of the skills that you had to learn as you made that transition, obviously doing those years in the NHS to now you're on Whipple Street and now you're serving this level of clientele?
Oh, so apart from obviously being highly skilled and being able to actually deliver the kind of work they're looking for. Because most of my work is full mouth rehabilitation. Okay? It's very high precision work. It involves the training pathway that I went through. I mean, I must have spent 13 years at university. Okay? That includes dentistry and doing all my training and refining it, and then going on to learning from people in Europe and people in back in Asia, in Turkey, everywhere. Okay, I found the niche I wanted to develop my skills in, and then I looked, and as you guys will now have the opportunity to, because there's so many courses everywhere. Okay, but I wouldn't say be careful, but be selective. Do your due diligence. Work out where you're going to learn something rather than just collect CPD. That was just being able to deliver the stuff. Okay? I'm actually at a point where I feel comfortable and back where I think I should have been. I mean, my grandmother used to say you're wasted in dentistry, and if I'd stayed in Nepal, I don't think I would have been a dentist. I mean, she said you would have been the first dollar billionaire in Nepal if you had stayed. Anyway, that's a different story. But I came back to that kind of level of society again, and that's why I feel comfortable where I am now. And to be able to adapt to that involved meeting people like my wife, because we had similar interests, and because she's Russian. Simple things like learning how to speak я говорю на русском языке, and so I can speak to my patients, and I mean it's possible. It's B1 level, I'd say now. Okay, but I want to get to C2. C2 is when I can take a degree in Russian.
Oh wow!
So because I focus, planned, scheduled, and I'm executing. Okay, so it's like a constant for me, because it's always there in my head. I don't have to be thinking about where I want to be, because it's subconsciously active all the time. It's clicking away.
When a student at this level, almost I would say this pinnacle of patient care that you're providing now, right? We've been to your practice. We've seen the amazing technology that you have on offer, right? How important would you say it is to invest in good technology, good materials, and good equipment to provide the best quality patient care for your patients?
Don't do what I would have done if my wife wasn't around, okay? Which is just a shiny thing while it clicks, buy it, okay? Like, where'd you get the money? I borrowed it. Or, she looks at she's a very good business person, okay? She looks at the return on investment, and she also looks at where we are and where we need to be, okay? She knows that we don't compare ourselves to other practices or anything, because quite frankly, we're a very successful debt-free business. But she's very much like me in that she supports what I do, because she can see that I'm the one that has the particular skill set that people travel for. So over 20% of my patients, between 20 and 25% of my patients every year come from overseas, and they are seeking a particular skill set. So the way I describe the work I do, and it was given to me by as an anecdote by one of the F1 drivers. So I treat a few of the F1 drivers, current and retired. Was that it said, Anil, he said, if you're an F1, you wouldn't be a driver. I said, I know. I said, you would have been an engineer, okay? You would have been like an Adrian Newey. And I said, yeah, I know, because I'm really geeky. So I've met all these guys, okay? Anyway, the point is that they're constantly refining their skills. They're constantly achieving better and better. Okay? And when something goes wrong, the other thing I learned from the F1 is have an F1 mentality, which is something's not quite right, okay? Whether it be something personal, whether it be something that's broken, whatever, okay? The F1 mentality is fix it now, fix it properly, okay? And just get it done. Okay? Get back on the stage and then just keep growing. So buying stuff like 3D operating microscope and then having it customized to yourself, okay, it suits me, because I can see that although it's a unique piece of equipment globally, okay, it's not quite exactly how I want it. I custom everything. I mean, whether it's a suit I have made or whatever, it's just the way I am. So the way I lead my life now is just reflective of how I am in here, and being able to fit in with the needs of those particular patients and what they aspire to as well, and what they're expecting from you, because they have big expectations. Okay? You have to constantly be reinventing yourself. Not reinventing, you have to be refining yourself. And so I would say to any young graduates now, okay, that you want to be on that continuum of learning. There's no good time, I've said it before, no good time to do postgraduate education. Once you finish BDS, that's just the start, okay? You want to continue growing because it's fun. I mean, you can hear in my voice, all my patients always say it, you're so passionate about dentistry. I am. I don't want to actually retire. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. And one of the things that, like, just going back to the body, I actually like exercising all the time. I've been doing it since I was 4 or 5, from gymnastics to judo to karate to everything else. Okay? But it makes a difference because it allows you to physically continue to perform at a very high level. What I see is with my peers now that are all in their 50s and their 60s and things, okay, that they're physically, even if they're mentally, still engaged by dentistry, they're physically not able to do it. Everything starts to slow down, or they start to develop pathologies, or their bodies start to give way. Okay, and all I can say to them is start exercising now. When you're young, you two guys, okay, and everyone's watching now. Okay, go to the gym, go regularly. Okay, but don't just go and sit on a bike for 10 minutes. Go get a PT. I mean, I go to Anthony Joshua's gym, and I have a professional instructor there. Okay, and that guy, he actually said to me with the other senior instructor last week, he said, "You're probably the most improved in this last year." Okay, and I'm their senior, I'm the elite. Okay, everyone keeps coming up to me and saying, "I can't believe how old you are, and how long have you been doing?" This girl said, "How long have you been in karate?" And I told her, and she said, "Oh, you must have been really dedicated doing it for 20 years." I said, "No, 50 years. I've been training for 50 years." She said, "Really?" And the thing is that you just do a little bit every day. Okay, you just keep yourself consistently improving, not just doing a little bit and just going on a flat plane, but just consistently improving, because that's what makes dentistry so exciting for me. Okay.
A question I have at the back of that, then, Anil, is I want to know a bit more about your philosophy. What is your approach towards dentistry, and by extension, the work that you do? Because it sounds like you're someone who's very intentional, very calibrated in the things you do. What is the reason behind why you do what you do?
Oh, because I'm lucky. I've found something that I really enjoy, okay? But also something I'm very good at. Okay? If you find something that that you really enjoy, okay, that you have a real passion for, and then you develop your skill. Remember, I was a good operator, and I was well above average, okay, but I was never the best. And I'll tell you now, I'll tell all of you, okay, that I'm not the best dentist you'll meet, okay? I have a lot of skills, and I'm not bad, but I've met many dentists that in certain disciplines or certain parts, are much better than me that I learn from. And what it is for me is that I've nurtured those, okay, and that I've constantly wanted to improve. So let me explain it this way. The stuff I learned at the Eastman 25 years ago, okay, the way that we were taught then, okay, to do full mouth rehabs, to do preparations, etc. All of the principles are still the same. Everything that I was taught there, okay, I don't do anymore. I went way beyond that, okay, to using. You asked me about latest materials I use and techniques and things. Okay, I mean, I'm working with people like Riaz Yar. You surround yourself with friends, similar friends. Okay, so people that are really, are going to help you to make yourself better. Okay, Riaz was taught by my classmate Julian Satterthwaite. Okay, so
Julian at Manchester.
Yeah, he was my classmate at the Eastman. Okay, and you know what? He's like a grumpy bloke. Okay? Sorry, Julian. Okay? And Riaz applied to James Hull when I was clinical lead at the Birmingham practice to come and work, and he was starting his PhD. And I noticed he was in Manchester, and I said, "Who's teaching you?" And he said, "Oh, so and so and so, and Professor Satterthwaite." So I thought, okay. And James said, "This guy looks like he's good. Find out a bit about him." So I rang up Julian, and I said, "Julian, what's this guy like?" "Oh, Riaz, he's not shitty." And that's a really big compliment.
Okay.
Now, Riaz, you know what he's like? He's like a yapping puppy dog. Me and Julian keep saying, "Riaz, stop getting so overexcited." And he keeps ringing me up and saying, "Have you seen this? Have you seen this?" So he introduced me to the module, and my wife as well. Okay, and my wife, in her critical analytical brain, said £28,000. And as soon as she saw it, okay, she said, "You need this." And I said, I was the one that was saying, "Well, it's a bit expensive, just as a digital articulator." And she said, "No, it's got a wow factor, okay? It's got a wow factor, amazing wow factor, okay?" And what it is actually 4D motion. It's literally like it's like a digital articulator. So what it does, as Riaz explained, and when I first started using it was that it actually allows the precision of my work to get even better. So I'm using an operating microscope. This allows me to do the design of the cuspal angles, to account for the asymmetry in the condylar heads, etc., and jaw movements, everything. Okay? So my work has literally increased one quantum because I needed to improve, and I could see that improvement. And she was absolutely right about the wow factor. Now, I've got nice nurses, okay, and when they first saw it, they said, wow. Every single patient I've done the module for, every single one of them gone, wow. When they see their jaw moving and the digital reflection, okay, and my nurses, every single time, although they've done it 100 times each, they still go, wow, and then it's like a goldfish. But that makes it exciting for me because I can see that stuff I was doing 25 years ago has evolved. So what I've done is I've adapted to those changes. Okay? I've literally just kind of continued because I'm passionate. I find it really exciting, and I'm making myself unique because if these people are coming over from the other side of the world, I have 2 patients from New Zealand that fly in all the time. I have patients from all over the world. Okay? And they come for a particular skill set, and that has to be exceptional. If you're going to put yourself at that level, then you need to maintain it.
Yeah, and a question on that, because at that level, your patients perceive you as somebody and they have expectations of you. How do you manage those expectations, especially where you're at? Those expectations will be the highest that any patient might have. How do you manage those expectations?
Oh, so I was talking to a lord today who was who wanted me to do some surgery on him. Okay, and so I sent him for a CBCT scan. Okay, now I've done a lot of max fax, okay, and I manage a lot of referrals for oral surgery as well as doing all my own hard tissue grafting, soft tissue grafting, etc. Okay, and I had to explain to him. I said, I can manage this, okay, but there is a very slight chance that you'll have a complication. This guy is a professional clarinetist as well. Okay, so he plays. Okay, and I thought. Oroantral fistula. If that happens, I'd have to refer you to a max fax surgeon. So what I'm telling you is what I told him, which was that I think you'd be better handled by my maxillofacial colleague, because I'm going to refer you to him. And he was very grateful. He said, fine. He said he didn't mind paying me. I said, that's not the point. And I'm not chasing the buck. I mean, it was a lot of money, but I and the GDC expect you to put your patients first and their welfare. So there are lots of craniofacial surgeries. There's a member of one of the Middle Eastern royal families who was referred to me just over 2 months ago. And the professor rang me and said, Anil, can you do this? And I said, yes. I said, but the surgery will be carried out by another craniofacial surgeon friend of mine, because although I can do it, I need to share that responsibility because my duty to that patient is such that I know this guy is much more expert at that particular level than I am, okay? But I can coordinate it. So we run multidisciplinary centers, and although they don't work in my practice, Harley Street is like an epicenter of excellence. I have lots of the plastic surgeons and facial aesthetic surgeons referring to me all the time, and it's a great way of providing the patients with the best of care, because that's what they're expecting. So I basically, my ego is I don't really actually have. I don't think I have one. But quite honestly, I don't care what you think. I'm more interested in getting the best of my patients. And if it means that I have to send the work, I sent somebody, Martin Wanandea, I'll mention his name, probably one of the best implant surgeons in the country and in Europe. Okay? And I had a big case. These cases are in tens of thousands of pounds. And I took my patient to see him because I said to her, I can do this, but Martin does this all the time, and I'll do maybe about 4 or 5 cases in a year. Okay, I don't need your money. Okay, and I physically took her to his practice, which is not in Harley Street. So that's how I manage it. I know what my limitations are. I know that I can manage things, but if I know that somebody else will do it better, okay, I don't have a problem sending you there. Okay?
Understood. So I know it's interesting you mentioned karate, right? Talk to us about how that's changed your life, and it seems like it's been a very important continuum throughout. What's your relationship like with sports and with karate in particular?
Oh, if I had a choice, then as I said, and I'll say it again, okay, then I think I would have just been teaching karate all my life.
And what does it do for you? Yeah, what does it do for you?
All the usual stuff, like the gives you confidence and allows you to be fit and everything else. Okay, but it's the philosophy behind it. Funakoshi Gaishin's original development of Shotokan karate, which I've studied, and I'm going to Japan in October this year, and I'm planning to take my 4th Dan exam there, okay, with the Japanese Karate Association, and so they're going to take no prisoners, and I'm getting combat ready, which is one of the reasons why I'm sparring literally every day in boxing and in karate for the next 7 months or so. But it's something that, like dentistry, I have a real passion for. Okay, it's not something that I'm the best at, okay, but it's something that I can see myself. So the only person that's competing against myself is me. Okay, and that's how I feel about dentistry, which is why I really don't care when the doors are shut. Okay, that no one else. I don't compare myself to other dentists. Okay, why? I'm not interested. I know what I can do, and other people know what they can do, what I can do. Sorry, and if anything, all that's happened is that comparing myself to Eddie, who is my friend, and I say comparing because we started off together, and he followed to develop his karate career to the great heights that I'd be happy 5th or 6th Dan, okay, and he's at 8th Dan already. The difference is that I spent my time basically building this life and this career so that I was financially able to support everything that goes with this. Okay? And all money does is it just buys you freedom. So now I'm at that stage where I'm actually being able to go back to karate. So to answer your question in that roundabout way, I've followed that passion because it's something that allows me to express my self-discipline. I can see improvements all the time, but I can also see that I'm having to adapt to those changes because my body is much older now. When I was a young fighter in my 20s and 30s, I was, then I was a good level, and nationally and regionally. But I'm slower now. So what I've realized is that my karate has changed. It's a lot stronger now. It's a lot more evolved. I'm just physically different, but it's just growing stronger and slower and much more competent.
You mentioned that, Anil, something which really fascinates me, which is freedom, right? Talk to me more about your understanding and actually more so interaction with freedom and how your life now can afford you certain freedoms you maybe didn't have in the past.
Believe it or not, we actually my wife and I lead a comfortable but very modest life. And it just allows us to do things like, and it'll allow all of the dentists, all of you guys, okay, when you qualify to, send your kids to private school or the best schools, to live in a nice house, live in a nice environment, etc. Okay, all of those things, those trappings of success and financial success, everyone will get. What it does for me is it allows me to create the kind of environment that I enjoy, which is working. Okay, so the environment that you've been to when you've come to the practice, you know that I see the kind of patients I do, but it also allows me to just work and see maybe 1 or 2 patients. I don't have KPIs, or I don't have to worry about EBITDAs and things, apart from the end of the year. I understand finance well, but like my wife says, we want to go to wherever, okay? I think, okay, we'll just shut the practice. She's been asking me for over a year and a half, definitely for the last year, to retire. And I said, I don't want to. So what I've done is I've tried to work out how I can keep her happy. And that's by tapering down the amount of work I do, but still doing the work I want to do, because I want to work for at least another 10 years. Okay? And to be able to give her the kind of freedoms that she's looking for as a family. So, I don't neglect them. I don't spend all my time at work just working for the sake of it. I prioritize my family. Family always first. You get to realize that quite quickly.
And you obviously throughout your time, you mentioned you've taught in Nepal, taught in Bahrain as well. And I think in the conversation that we had, one thing you highlighted that a lot of people come to you and ask about, practicing abroad and working abroad as well. What kind of advice do you have on that topic? Dentists wanting to go abroad, what opportunities are there that are available?
Go, especially now. Okay, so if you think about starting dental school, okay, then think about going to Europe. Okay, don't do it here. It's different. When I qualified, and people of my generation, dentistry was all university courses were free. I graduated with no debt. Okay? And literally, people that went to university at that time were regarded as being the top 1% of the population. So it made a lot of sense to come to the UK and or to be in the UK and to go to university. Okay? Now it's obviously a lot more different, okay? And the opportunities that await young A-level students that want to perhaps go into dentistry are such that you think, as a parent, yeah, you get the same degree, go out to Spain, learn a different language, have a different experience. You can come back here or you can go over there. Okay. But for the people that are already at dental school here and people that are just recently qualified, get onto that continuum of your career pathway. Okay. Whether it be you decide you want to go into specialist training and spend another 5 years of your life in getting into more debt and whatever, okay, and not that it's a bad thing, okay, but you need to really commit to it, okay, or whether you want to just be a general practitioner and go on to different courses, find something you like doing, get the accreditation, and especially if you can get really good quality accreditation, university registered ones, okay, and also the Royal Colleges, like the Edinburgh College. Okay. Any of the diplomas and degrees from the membership exams from the Edinburgh College, like their suite of diplomas we have, the MAGDS exam, which I have been instrumental in and I was until recently their chief or lead examiner. These are very high level exams, okay, which are recognized internationally, especially in the Middle East, especially in Asia. And then take the opportunity, if you haven't fall in love and committed to a partner who's stuck here, okay, then go and explore, go to Australia, just go and see the world. You've got so many opportunities here. The world has literally opened up for you. Dentistry as a BDS qualification is pretty much the same all around the world. Once you've got BDS, whether it's from Nepal or whether it's from here or wherever, okay, it's pretty much the same. It's what you do after it that's going to define your career and your lives.
For sure. I think one clear thing is you should not stop growing after university's finished. That should the start of a very long, lifelong journey.
For everything in your life. Everything in your life.
Yeah, understood. So I know one other thing which is quite interesting about you is that you practice six-handed dentistry. You talked a bit more about what that is, and that's not really conventional nowadays. So what influenced that decision?
That's something that evolved as I was working, because I realized, because I operate with a microscope, so I'm not an endodontist. I do all my restorative work and I do my surgery, perioplastic surgery, sinus grafting surgery, everything, okay, with the microscope that you've seen. And I've retrofitted and customized the microscope so that it allows me to move around the patient as you've seen. But I also use magnifying loops, and I work with, I think my hairdresser came to see me once and he says, "You have such flair with your hands, doctor." And what he meant was, I can spin instruments and things. It's a bit like somebody in, a poker player or something. Okay? It's just something that I do instinctively. Okay, and my nurses know how to pass 2-3 instruments in their hands like this. So when I'm operating, I'm literally sat up like this, and I'm operating, and I don't see anything else. The nurse A on my left nurses for me. She wears 3D 3D glasses, and she looks at the 3D screen on that side, so she can see exactly what I'm doing. And nurse B looks after the patient and nurses for nurse A as well as me. And she looks at the big 64-inch 4K TV on that side. So both of them can see exactly what I'm doing. And they talk to each other and they talk to the patient. And I barely talk to anyone. I just literally zone out. Sonos is on, and the whole ambience, it's like you're just engulfed in this relaxing music here. And then on the TV, I've usually got waves and things lapping. So the nurses will pass instruments like this, and they know what I'm looking for. I'll mumble something, I'll say something, pass, and they know what I'm doing, and it's almost like they're telepathic. So I'll have these nurses passing instruments like this, and it's literally six-handed. So I have 3 nurses all together, okay, and all of them work from reception to in the surgery, and they rotate all the time. And I think I was telling you that sometimes I'll look up, okay, and the nurses will have swapped round. One of them will have gone off for a lunch break or something, but they will interact with each other. So a very tight group. Okay, so those 3 girls basically look after what I do, but they understand what I'm doing clinically. And as many of you that are in practice will know, okay, when you've got a good nurse, they know exactly what you're going to be doing next. They know what to pass you, etc. Okay, and that's all it is. It's an evolution of a particular style or modus operandi that I have. Okay, and it works very well for me. And surgery was even designed so that there was enough space, okay, so that they could move around. Okay? I've even given them their own saddle chairs and everything, as you've seen. But But one of the other beauties is that because they work so closely and in harmony, you know, when you finish the patient, by the time you sat them up and you're talking to them again, okay, the other nurse or both of them started clearing up for each other, and the whole area is just immaculate again. So six-handed dentistry is an evolution of four-handed dentistry, which is just passing instruments like this. And different people have developed different styles. It's just a style that's working very well for me.
So when Anil was doing his surgery, he's in absolute flow state, and it's just him and his work.
Yeah. Oh, it's when you get into flow, that's the reason I know that dentistry, you know, suits me so well. It's a bit like when I'm in karate, like or when I'm boxing. I box every morning, and Dion, my instructor, was saying to me 2 days ago, he said, he asked me to do some shadow boxing in the ring, and I just had my eyes shut. Okay? And he was just laughing. And when I looked up, okay, him and Sammy, the other instructor, were there. He says, "You're in flow state." And I was, because I could actually physically see who I was fighting. But I was also aware of where I was in the ring. I wasn't sort of like getting tangled up in stuff, because I know my footwork, I know the environment. So, you know, that whether it's karate or whether it's other martial arts, I mean, karate is different. Karate is so much depth to it. It's more than art. It's like it literally is a kind of philosophy and way of life, and it gives you that discipline. So yeah,
it's that both granular awareness and engineering of yourself and your environment. From what you were saying about, you know, that spatial awareness from the karate, but also when we were in the practice and you were mentioning how you have everything behind you and then the nurses pass them to you, to the fact that everything, even the things that you've invested in, the technology, is intentional in a way to create a workflow that allows you to perform at your best. It's engineering everything around you to be able to allow you to perform at your optimal, and not just focusing on that, you know, again, that willpower and that you know, effort yourself, but also creating an environment. I feel like this is something that's really stood out throughout the whole podcast is, you know, it's not about just throwing random things out there. It's about being intentional, but also engineering yourself and your environment, right? Who you are, what you do, how you plan and execute, and also your surroundings to put you in the best position to be able to achieve that goal. I feel like in the practice as well, everything that we saw, everything was geared towards that philosophy, right?
Yeah, and while we're talking here, you know, I mean, you're getting an idea of me. I'm an individual, okay, but everyone that goes through dental school, we're all individuals. Okay, all you're seeing is the way that I've optimized my career and my life. Okay, and things that I hope whoever's watching this or listening to this will get out of it is that they can do the same. They don't have to be me. They don't have to, you know, they're going to be different. Okay? But the opportunity that has presented itself in the form of the career that they've entered means that they have this fantastic opportunity. And then, although there'll be setbacks, as there have been many for me, okay, then with a singular mindset, okay, with the commitment to excel, with following a continuum of learning and self-development, okay, whether it be in the profession or whether it be personally, refining yourself by having focus, planning, scheduling, executing, you know, whatever it is you want to achieve, okay, learning that you need to embrace resilience, that things aren't going to go well all the time, that you need to be able to, okay, well, you know, never mind, you know, don't get overawed by it. No, one thing about that, okay, is don't be reactive. I see that as a big kind of early fault in people who really struggle or become bitter subsequently. It's that, you know, somebody says something or somebody does something or something happens, okay, and they immediately react, okay. Whereas I've learned to create a tiny little space between when something happens and before I say something. And when you do that, okay, then you can think, okay, and then I instinctively I look at the positives. Okay, that's happened. Wow. And then I'm looking for that F1 solution. How do I get around this? And subconsciously and subliminally, there's this message going around my head. You know, this is where I want to be. This is how I'm going to achieve it. And it clicks there all the time. And then when you develop self-discipline, really the key to everything. Okay?
Understood. So I know the last question that we have to wrap the whole conversation of, I guess, a final finishing note, as it were, is what does success look like to you now?
Well, probably the way I'm living my life now, because it's a mental switch as well. You know, it took me a while to get here. And like one of my friends, close friends, said to me, I mean, I've got lots of friends. I've got a very small group of very close friends. And one of them said, "You're living your best life, Anil." I said, yeah, maybe, but I don't care. I don't care what other people think. I care what she thinks. But we've known each other for a good few decades or so. But I'm content.
Awesome.
And the only reason I'm speaking to you guys is because I know that you're out there to try and help other people. And if they can learn something from my particular journey, and I don't lead a perfect life, okay? But I know how to improve on it. And I want all of the people out there, I want all of you to not just fulfill your potential, but to exceed your potential. Anything you think you can achieve, trust me, okay, you can do better. Because if I can, you definitely can.
Awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure, Anil. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Been great.